right, good morning. You've probably at this point seen or heard the term slip switch. This is a double slip switch, and this video is really about talking about using these double slip switch. This one is an ON30 double slip switch from Pico. It's an amazing piece of engineering. The things that the little bits and pieces that are moving based on which way this is set is just staggering. The tiny little bits and pieces that are moving that they had to engineer is just wonderful. But it's complicated to use, and this video is really about when should one use one of these. And this is my experience. Other people have different experiences, and there's really some wonderful videos on the engineering that are in here. So let me just show you quickly how it functions, or what it's meant to do, right? So there's two in and there's two out, and this looks like it's just a crossing at some level, but it's not. So the way these are set, this is up and this is down. There's only two switch motors that control this, and this train will go straight across in this fashion. So it went across. Now when I flip this up, this is going to go in this direction. So I can go from this track to that track. And then when I flip this down, it's going to go across. And when I flip this down, it's going to go back to where it was in the first place. So pretty amazing piece of engineering, but the complexity that's involved in looking at the configuration that these things are on both sides in order to decide how the setting is not easy. And if you do it by visual inspection when a train is coming, that's tough. I had to develop a control panel with LEDs and toggle switches, double pull, double throw, momentary toggle switches, in order to throw this the correct way. In the end, so I have two loops. I have one here and I have one here, and they cross each other. And I wanted to be able to go from this loop to this loop, which is exactly what this does. But the management that is required, the visual management that's required on the control panel, is pretty extensive. And so this video is really about when should you use one of these and my experience with those. Watch videos about this and how people use them and where they use them, because certainly different people have had different experiences. All right. So we've talked about what a slip switch does, and here's the part of my layout that we were just looking at, where the train goes in this direction, that direction. Here is the control panel that I had to develop in order to control this slip switch, these motors that are installed here, and with the LEDs, in order to know where the train was going to be heading. This is a lot of control that you have to exert on looking at the switch panel all the time, because if you have two trains that are running on two loops, this is not acting as a crossing, right? It's in this fashion that the train coming this way will derail. Only the train coming in this fashion will actually work, which is the kind of complication about slip switches that I'll talk about. All right, so if you have two loops, it's really, really tempting, of course, to be able to transition one train into between the two loops. And you can do that easily by just adding these two pieces of track and four switches, right? So this is just an notional kind of thing. And then your trains can go between the loops, and it's just a lot of fun. Now, the thing is, by adding four switches, you now have four switches to control, which is doable. but you can set them, right? So you can set for the train to go this way and the train to go that way, and effectively they're running in parallel. And then you have two crossings. You have one here and one down here. So switching. Why would you want to use a slip switch? Well, if you're switching between loops, you now have, you can do it two ways. You can do it this way, or you can do it this way. And you can see you have a crossing here plus four switches. And you in both configurations, and you come in one way and you can go out either this way or come out that way. Similarly, for this configuration, you can come in this way and you can come out two ways, right? But that whole process takes about 30 inches of track to actually do that on your layout. With a slip switch, which can replace all of this, these crossings and all four switches, can just be you have one way in and you have two ways out, just as you had before. This only takes about 10 inches on your track, so not bad. That is a really, really nice configuration. And you can see on my layout, I did not have a lot of space, so this really fit the bill. The advantages are in green, the disadvantages are in red. As you know, it only required two switch motors instead of four. You don't need the crossing anymore in the one configuration, and you've gained space. The increased in complexity in the switching, meaning that you cannot just set the slip switch and let two trains run in parallel. You have to continuously manage that slip switch for a train coming in one direction versus the other. Now, and that's what the second bullet is, right? So either the track is set to go across or in one of these four directions. If a train is coming in any other directions, it will derail, or at least for this particular slip switch that we've been talking about. All right. Now, um, as I mentioned, I think I'm hitting you pretty strongly. Here are my two loops. For me, that loss of being able to run two trains on the two track independently without having to manage the direction of the slip switch, that loss, it just doesn't make using a slip switch for this uh, useful. Other people may have found a way to manage that, and please look around to see if other people have found an easier way to handle that. Now, let's take a look at other uses for slip switch. Here is a train yard, right? So here you've got a train coming in. Here you've got one switch, another switch right here, a third one here, a fourth one here, and either you're going between parallel tracks or you're going into a train yard. So a good place to replace a slip switch is right here to replace this configuration is right here in the middle, right? Because you although you're only replacing it with two switch motors and two switches with one slip switch and still two switch motors. All right, so let's take a look at how you would install this, right? So you can either go straight. Now this is much more of a straight through rather than the two, one coming down here and then another one coming down here. It's all being done by this central thing that, again, you've gained, this is only in 10 inches that you're doing all of this. So if you don't have a lot of space, here the disadvantage. Well, it's basically the same number of switch motors and the same number of switches. You've gained some space. Again, there's a little bit of increased complexity in the switching, but not too much more. And maybe even none, right? Because in the previous diagram, when you were going straight, you had to make sure that the two switches were actually set the right way. And here you've got one thing that you're taking care of in your switchboard. All right, so this is my present configuration. I have one loop here, one loop here. They cross, they come around. You can see this is all being done in 10 inches. I really didn't have a lot of space. My mountain was coming down too quickly, and I just didn't have any space in the left side of this track. And they had to cross over. But if I wanted this track, this loop to interact, to be able to switch between the two loops, I had to use this slip switch. After all of this has happened, I have decided, and figuring out all these lighting and all the switch motors and so on, I have decided that I will in the future remove this. It's just too complex, and in terms of continuously looking at which set switch is set which way. Now, there's some electronics that you can work on with little uh, photodiodes that might be set under here or here and on the other side as well. And if the train is coming in one direction or the other, could flip things automatically. But that's another level of complexity that I would have to get some help with, of course. All right. Hopefully that helps as to when to use a slip switch. And, if you find creative ways of using it, let me know. All right. Bye-bye.